the people. The story you told me, I think Tommy was there, I'm not sure, about Jerry and I are the same age. And I asked him, how did he know what his roots were? And at the age of 5, and I was thinking, man, at the age of 5, I can remember some of the things happening in my life, but tell them what happened in your life.
Well, I started the book to write about my experience, and I got 1 chapter. That's it. And if you don't mind, I'll just try to go through this. I didn't know if you would ask me, but I thought you might.
It's a God thing. That's why I wanted to ask you.
Yes, it is a God thing. Well, I'll just tell it, because it takes too long to read it. But I was about 6. It was the late 30s, 39. And I didn't know I was a Jew, because in those days, of course, the war was about to crank up, and there were many people in our community who were with Hitler because he was against the communists.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
We're in a similar situation today. And we have to be very careful. I had an uncle who's dead now, may God rest his soul. And he was even on the side because he was in the mercantile business, and all of our dresses, everything came. My little cousins wore flour sack dresses. I mean, it was...
Where was this at?
In Louisiana, southern Louisiana, in the swamps. So we had this emergency meeting called. And the adults were talking in hushed tones, so I knew they didn't want us to know what was going on. I had a baby sister who had just been born. So we woke up early in the morning, and my daddy was a dairy farmer. That was not unusual, but I knew something was afoot. So we drove over to my grandmother's house. My grandmother's name is Schumann, Leah Schumann, and from Vilna, Poland. Vilnius, Lithuania. Mm-hmm. She had left Lithuania, Poland at that time, and walked out when the communists, the Reds were fighting the Whites. Mm-hmm. And she thought it was time to leave. So she walked to Hamburg, Germany, and came to Philadelphia. She didn't come through Ellis Island. She came through Philadelphia, and she had moved on down trying to find a place where there was not another Jew in business so that she could make a living. And they pushed, they sold rags on a push cart. Mm-hmm. And, but she had done well selling rags. Mm-hmm. So we went to visit, and my parents put me on the back porch because they didn't want me to hear what was being said, but I was curious. So I went and listened at the door. And they read a letter in Yiddish. There was one young man that they wanted to get out of Poland before it was too late. They knew something was happening. We did too. I could feel the fear. But when I listened at the door and they read the letter about how they wanted to get this one son out, his name, he's in the Yad Vashem record. Shmuel Pruski. He was a young engineer. And when I heard them talking, they said, it's too late. You couldn't get anything into Poland. There was no way to get any money. That was the only, the lines of communication had already been shut out. They knew what was about to happen to them, and they wanted to get this one young man out. And I started weeping. I realized that these people, whoever they were, hated me too. Because I heard that my family was Jewish and that I was a Jewish. I didn't know it.
Until that moment.
That moment.
39.
And I was afraid. 1939, I was afraid. Mm-hmm. And of course, I grew up quick. Mm-hmm. After that, I began to listen to everything, the news. There was no television, no newspapers where I lived, just an old Philco radio that we'd gather around to listen to the news. And
people don't know what that was. That was our main communications in our department.
And my grandfather owned a grocery store, and we'd sit on the porch. And I'd listen to everything that was going on because my cousins by that time they were joining up. And to fight. Neville Chamberlain, the Prime Minister of England, said, let's just go along with Hitler. He's doing the good thing. He's going to get rid of these communists. Mm-hmm. The Pope Pius XII, I believe they made concessions, and I'm not judging anything. I don't know what I would have done. I was scared. I've been scared since 1939 because I know what's about to happen. I read the Bible. But I didn't want it to happen. I wanted to extend my life into the future best I could. Put it off. That's when I found out I was a Jew.
You know, in contrast, you and I are the same age, just days apart in age. And yet on my side, here we were living in New Mexico, California. We had no fear of anything. And yet I'm sitting here thinking, how God blesses, how some of us are protected and others aren't. And that's the way the Jews are even today. God is our only hope.
Only. The Lord, He is God.
Amen.
And there's only one. Mm-hmm. He said, I don't see anybody up here but me.
That's right. Nobody else there.
You know, you were a lawyer. How did Dr. Eby came into this picture somewhere? This is how you became a Christian?
No. I became a Christian on an airplane.
An airplane.
Oh, God. Yeah, I had caught a flight from Dallas to New Orleans. I was practicing law in Fort Worth I'll just mention his name if I can think of it in a minute. But anyway, I was on the way to New Orleans, and I had gone to the bookstore and picked up in the airport. Braniff Airlines was still flying at that time. And I sat in the Braniff waiting room because Delta at that time was growing, but it was not real big yet, as it is now. And I had gone to the bookstore, I picked up a book that I thought was science fiction. And when I got I looked, and it was a commentary on the revelation of Jesus Christ. And I thought, what am I doing with this? So I thought,
That's a good Jewish boy like me doing
what am I doing with this? Well, I didn't know. I was thinking maybe he didn't. Well, I knew my condition.
Yeah.
So I decided I'd put it in my pocket and dispose of it on the airplane in the seat pocket. But I sat down beside a man from Austin, Texas, and he wanted to talk to me about this book. He wanted to talk about Jesus, and I didn't know anything about Jesus. At least I couldn't remember anything. Whatever I knew had gotten so mixed up in my mind. So I started to read the book in self-defense, just so I wouldn't have to talk to him. And it began.
That's good.
The revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave unto him to show unto his servants things